All right, welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. I have a returning guest, first time in a couple years, but we've kept in contact for these two life-changing years, I would say. Gene Folks from Folks Unfettered podcast, and actually, this is what I was talking to you about. This is my surprise. I actually have my beanie.
Oh,
Yeah, the Folks
nice.
Unfettered beanie. Um,
Right on. Right on.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
that. You got to get some Blue Dog Whisperer gear,
Hold on,
brother.
I got the red green thing going on. It's Christmas in June.
It's awesome. That's
Yeah.
so awesome.
All right.
I should probably take my hat off because it's darkening my face, but yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, you got me geared up.
Yep.
You encouraged me to do that. So
I'm gonna
thank
lift
you
this
for
up a
that.
little bit so I can hear a little better. But I love, I
That's
love,
okay.
I love the hat. And everyone, check out Folks Unfettered. Where is your podcast on so the listeners can?
It's on YouTube and all the streaming channels, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon Music. You can tell Alexa to play it. It's on YouTube Music. Um, so it's available yeah, really just everywhere. And
Amazing.
my YouTube channel is my favorite because it gives me an opportunity to be less even though I'm not that way on the podcast, but be more authentic. Even with the mistakes and it's great Derek. Even with the mistakes and other stuff, I just want to have, like you and I were just talking about, just make it feel like a real conversation.
Right.
And I have yet to make that transition to have audience participation and the whole thing, but I'm working towards that.
Well,
So
you actually you did a wonderful episode. I want to say about 3 or 4 weeks ago regarding the Supreme Court. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because obviously you've been an amazing guest and an amazing friend, but we are coming up on 250 years of
yep,
the United States, and you yourself have served honorably in our military. So I want to
yep,
talk a little bit about what this milestone means to you.
sure. And that's a great question. And I don't know if you can still see me. Can you see me?
I can see you. Yep.
Okay, perfect. That's a good question. I think that recently I've been asked by people that very question, which is what does 250, years of American history mean to me, uh, as a veteran? And, my answer is probably different from what people expect. For me, it's not about fireworks. It's not about parades. It's not about um sort of this idea of pretending we've always, gotten everything right.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, America's 250 is a reminder that nations, much like people, are works in progress. And you know, as a veteran, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Not a political party, not a president, not an ideology, the Constitution,
Hmm.
which is simply just, Evan, an idea. And that distinction, matters obviously because, when you serve, you quickly learn that patriotism is not blind loyalty. Patriotism it's commitment. It's believing something is worth improving anyone, even when it falls short, of its ideals. It's also being, critical. You critique, you provide healthy critique out of love, right? Not apathy, not going along to get along, but you critique and sort of hold a mirror up to the thing that you love so that it becomes better.
Right.
And, at 250 years old, America is still wrestling with the same fundamental question it has wrestled with since its founding. And that is, can a nation built on lofty principles continuously expand the meaning of those principles to include everyone? And I'll go so far as to say this, Evan, is that, that's not where we are right now. And I'm kind of not wanting to get to that piece, but um, I don't feel that's where we are, right now. I think the message that we are getting in our current political administration is, you know, we want to expand the meaning of those principles not to include everyone. And you go by that from language, right? Um, so I know that the America that I served, is not perfect. The America I love has never been perfect. Yet what makes this country remarkable to me is not perfection. It's our capacity for self-correction. And, every generation of Americans has inherited an America that was unfinished. And, I had to give some thought to that when you were titling this episode. And, it was tough, man. I spent a couple hours trying to, take down notes and look at it in a way that, would not be pointed, but will be something that people can return to time and time again. And that's when it finally hit me that America is unfinished. And following the sequence of events, it's, the founders left work undone. The abolitionists picked up some of that work. The suffragists, they picked up more. And then the civil rights leader carried it even further. And at this time of our country celebration, veterans of every race, religion, background, and political persuasion have contributed to that effort. We have to remember that. And there is a responsibility, um, that, hey, now it's our turn. I don't know if you can still see me or not.
I can.
My screen's going blank. Okay, as long as you can
I
see me,
can.
that's fine. And so now it's our turn. And, when I look at the current state of affairs, which I've talked about, I was invited to have a profile interview on me, talking about my company, Ocean X, talking about the book a manuscript that I finalized called What They Couldn't Contain. It's a story of resilience and survival, and hope,
It's a good book.
applicable to everyone. And then I also talk about Folks Unfettered. And we spent a brief period talking about the apprentice era. Um, and I discussed our current state of affairs, and I will repeatedly say that I see a country experiencing tremendous anxiety right now, right? We are more, connected than ever, and somehow more divided than ever. And that's a question that could be studied in and of itself. Why? We have access to more information than any generation in human history, yet many of us struggle to agree on basic facts. And, political disagreements have increasingly become moral indictments. Too often people no longer simply disagree with one another. They question one another's humanity. And that concerns me, and it should concern, you know, every single one of us. You know, because because one of the most important lessons military service taught me and teaches those that choose to serve is that mission matters more than ego. And, I served alongside people, I served beside people, whose backgrounds, beliefs, and life experiences, were just dramatically different, from my own. And yet when the mission called, those differences became secondary to a shared purpose. And
Right.
that shared purpose was for the love of the country, that we had. And I could tell you stories of when I was stationed in Europe or deployed and having conversations with guys from Alabama who had never had a man of color as a friend or, and who had never heard R&B or, and I'd never listened to country and how, we could have those debates about it. But man, when it came down to getting the job done, none of that mattered. And yet, even when we were in those situations, we had this connection. And this was before social media and all the globalism. Uh, we had this connection that we yeah, we may have different sects within our country, but when the push gets to kicking and shoving, that we're all brothers. We have a shared culture. We have a shared background, whether that's pretty, whether it's ugly. Um, and that bonded us, right? In a way that I don't think that we are, sort of there right now. And I think America could use a little more of that spirit right now. Not agreement on everything, not forced unity, but a renewed commitment to the idea, that we are fellow citizens before we are political opponents. And, this 250 year celebration of our country, should not simply be the celebration of where we've been. I believe that it should be an examination of where we're going, if that makes sense, which that makes sense. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, what kind of country do we want our grandchildren to inherit? Will they inherit institutions we strengthen or institutions we weakened? Will they, will they have to deal with rights and the freedom of, you know, you know, the pursuit of liberty, freedom, and happiness, or are they going to live in a country to where if you're not part of the accepted mainstream, then you are to be minimized and your rights are to be limited? Will they inherit trust or will they inherit cynicism? Will they inherit leaders who united people around a common purpose or leaders who profited from division?
Right.
So those questions matter far more than commemorative logos or anniversary events or fireworks or parades or, whatever, and that got me to thinking which has been my red thread is that as a leadership practitioner, I often say the leadership is not about being in charge. It's about stewardship, and you borrow responsibility from the future. See, that's the truth, whether you're leading a company, a community, a family, or a nation.
Hmm.
And so, America does not belong to us. We are just simply temporary custodians.
Yeah.
And the generation that founded this country, handed it to the next. And every generation since then has done the same. And so now we're in an era to where that responsibility belongs to us. And so at 250 years old, which I've been in buildings longer in our country, believe it or not, Americans, you know, America remains an extra and just an extraordinary experiment, not because it has succeeded perfectly, but because it continues to strive toward ideals that are larger than any single generation. And even in this current political climate, even given who some really major things that have happened to set a certain group of Americans behind, even with some of the political violence and civil unrest and violence that we've seen, you know, um, uh, as long as we continue to strive towards those ideals, then as a veteran, that gives me hope that the things that are making us sick, we're willing to fix. And not, and I say this not because I believe that, the challenges before us are small. They're not, they're huge, but because I know Americans have faced difficult moments before.
Right.
And, and every time we've managed to move forward, and that happened because ordinary citizens, I want to make that clear. Ordinary citizens chose courage over fear, service over self-interest, and possibility over cynicism. And cynicism is running rampant in our country right now. But, for me, that's what America 250 means to me. Not a celebration of a finished story, a recommitment to helping write the next chapter, potential, for us, to ask ourselves this real question. There's a potential for us to ask ourselves this real question, which is, whether America has lived up to the ideals for 250 years. The question is whether we're willing. Let me rephrase that. The question is not whether America has lived up to its ideals for 250 years. The real question is whether we're willing to do the work necessary to help it live up to them for the next 250 years. And that's what America at 250 means to me, brother. That's what it just means to me. It just, I've been given a lot of thought to this and the responsibility, you know, I have a little friend I have a responsibility, um, to live up to that. And that comes with certain challenges. And, in my upcoming episode, I'll give you a view is anything that I put in my podcast is subject and titles that not for the attention, not for the likes, not for the views. Um, it really is, hey, am I the only one thinking this? How is it hitting me personally? And and aren't we all thinking the same thing without uh uh the social media back and forth about my belief, this belief. And I think sometimes in those little snippets, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or in some cases even LinkedIn, there's not really, those aren't large enough, or X, those aren't large enough platforms, I believe, to have really meaningful discussions getting past just getting people to agree with your point.
Right.
I also believe that's what's so important about podcasts like ours, like the Blue Dog Whisper and Folks Unfettered, and is that we are willing to sit down with people that we tend to disagree with and challenge and be challenged, to get more like-minded people there, right? I want to sit down with an extreme conservative. I wouldn't even have a problem sitting down with somebody that's a white supremacist. It wouldn't bother me, right? As long as we're in a sort of a secure location and I know where I'm going and where I'm coming from. But, and I think that's healthy conversation. And I believe that as a leader, um, I welcome people challenging what I believe, why I believe it, because I'm not always right. And even if I walk away, uh, not convinced of another person's perspective, I can at least walk away with a deeper and better understanding of why they believe what they believe, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I believe that that is about as American as you can get.
I
And
concur.
it, and I think at this crucial point in our nation's history, we are at a crossroads, right? To where we can shuck all those ideals aside and say, no, we're going to rewrite the rules, and make those rules inoppressive. Or we can say, okay, this is what we inherited for 250 years. What is it? What are we leaving behind for the next 250 years? What are people going to say about this generation? Did anyone speak up against, uh, did anyone speak up for what they believed, not against what they didn't believe? And I've been given a lot of thought to people like James Baldwin and Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Gandhi, my Jewish brethren, Toni Morrison, Ernest Hemingway, but specifically, Black thought leaders, Paul Robeson,
Mhm.
because they spoke up in a time when what they said could have, in most cases did, in their life.
Mhm.
But, and it brought two things to mind: that yes, we still kill each other. We just do it, and those thought leaders, we just do it via the media, right? Characterizing people a certain way and trying to silence their voices. Um, and character assassination or reputation damage or whatever it is. Um, and the second thing is I am coming to terms, and you and I have talked about this, with what's stopping me from living up to the ideals and the courage and the risk, the financial risk, the potential for personal harm, um, the, the courage to be criticized, ridiculed, picked apart. What what is stopping me from stepping into that role? And I feel a kinship to those people that fought and died for this country, what they believed in to pick up that mantle and run with it. And that's why I'm doing the things I'm doing right now because, I'm really purpose is more about making money. It's more about getting my point across. It's what am I leaving behind for the next 250 years?
So true. And actually, a couple things to that. Number one, right after Charlie Kirk was assassinated,
Mhm,
I was saying some stuff online, and one of my friends who I work with at a photo studio, we were very, let's just put it this way. She voted for Trump, I voted for Harris, and she
mhm,
messaged me, and we both agreed this is some foobar, like,
mhm,
this is
mhm,
foobar stuff going on right now. You're in the
mhm,
military, so you know what that means. But
mhm. I
we
do.
both agree this is out of control. And I thought,
Mhm,
so she's scared she voted for one candidate. I'm scared I voted for another candidate.
mhm.
Who's winning here?
No one,
Right, right.
no one.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, what you said, I mean, Lisa Blunt Rochester, the U.S. Senator from Delaware, she had spoken last year at Rutgers, and she was actually talking about her experiences as a then Congresswoman on
Mhm,
January 6th. And she said that when she's overheard people coming closer and closer in her veins, she literally felt slavery, she felt the suffrage movement. She felt the
mhm,
civil rights movement,
mhm,
the mission to space. She just felt America's history going through her, and she realized that this was her moment, one way or another. She had to do something,
mhm,
and she was there, thankfully, to tell her story.
mhm,
So, as you've stated, it is about finding out. Well, we're finding out not only what we have done, how we've gotten here,
mhm,
but where we're going to continue going.
mhm, mhm. And more importantly, and it's so funny, and not to self promote, but as you and I are talking, and I didn't really uh prepare this,
Hmm.
it really it really goes back to the question that I asked about the museum, the Leadership Museum, and what was not going to be remembered. Or you think about it, when you go see a piece of art, and I love going to art museum. I've been doing it since I was younger than I can remember. Um, you don't think about the intention of the artist. You look at the evidence they left behind.
Hmm.
And I'm the kind of person where I always internalize whether something's good or I do something good or I do something bad. I always start with me. It's not really about the other person. It really is about me. How to put myself in a situation, why did I respond that way? That sort of self-examination. And I believe that that is a uniquely American, has been for the past 250 years, that we have always asked those existential questions, right? And I believe the founding fathers had a certain amount of wisdom, flaws, but a certain amount of wisdom in bravery in asking those questions, not just of the nation and those people they disagree with, but of themselves, right? And they questioned how could we be asking for? I think I've read the biography. I think it's by Liz Cheney, Mary Cheney, about, and then you and I talked about this before about John Adams, and they had this debate amongst themselves and said, how could we sit here and fight all these countries for freedom when we have enslaved our fellow human beings? And they meant to get to solving that issue, and then war broke out. And it wouldn't be until, you know, 60s, right? Or some point, when is it? Yeah, the civil rights movement came about.
Hmm.
So that was an ideal that was deferred. And someone, it was Lyndon B. Johnson, I believe, even though he was a well recorded racist, but he understood that how he felt about the matter, as did Lincoln, by the way,
Yes,
how he felt about the Emancipation Proclamation, how they felt about the matter was not about their feelings. It was about what were they going to leave behind for 250 years.
exactly. Exactly.
And I don't believe that we have on either side of the aisle, um, enough, I'll say this because I don't want to generalize, enough people willing, um, to put it all on the line, even if it causes them discomfort, loss of money, whatever, to put it all on the line, to leave the evidence that, hey, we took our responsibility seriously. It wasn't about us because I'm just a steward to move this country forward. And that means we have to cross aisles. And that means we have to talk to people who disagree with us. And that means we have to have not xenophobia. We have to have almost a collective mindset of, of, a willingness to have the hard discussions because whether small or large, known or well known, we're each going to have our museum where every single human being is going to leave evidence behind. It's going to tell us who they did, what they did, and not what their intentions were. Right. And I think that, if we can get to that root of the conversation, then I believe that we will find, um, less divisiveness, more measured and thought provoking, discussions, less violence, more understanding, and a more willingness to at times just agree to disagree, but realize that whether you're a Democrat, Republican, and all the other things you want to add to it, that, we may exhibit it differently, but we all love this country,
Right. Well,
right? And we want to see it excel. And that means we have to shrink our egos. And that's as a veteran specifically, and I know I don't think about this and I say it as, um, not lightheartedly, not trying to be dramatic, not trying to over sensualize, not trying to use hyperbole, not trying to set veterans as some, on a pedestal. But there is something unique, regardless of what their reasons are. At some point, when you serve long enough, you took an oath to die for something and something, an ideal that's bigger than you and people that you disagree with.
yep.
And that's just what that is.
Yep. And our country, and we got to stop in a second, but our country, we're looking for perfection, but everyone who has helped advance the cause were very flawed human beings. LBJ,
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln, who said that if
Hmm.
he could keep slavery, he would.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, even
MLK,
Henry
Malcolm
Ford,
X,
Henry Ford, they were
Henry.
all, a lot of them were
Yep.
bigoted individuals, but they did things
Yep.
that made us who we are today.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Even
That's
even
right.
Robert Byrd, who was a Klansman, and then by the end of his life had a 100% rating from the NAACP. I
Hmm.
mean, people
Hmm.
had to evolve, and some of them did.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
And we have to give them